Very good morning. It has been a practice to see that how an embedded system has been extensively used nowadays. We have seen at length the principle, a small design aspect, and we have seen certain bit of software like that. And now let us see how it has been extensively used. We have been already seen that the embedded system has been a very important factor in any of the processor is interrupt handling. The interrupt is one where I have been telling in the last class is that if a subordinate comes and interrupts me, it is me to give a service or not service as an operating system. Otherwise, as and when I complete my task of delivering lecture, then afterwards I can go and service to him. So therefore, he will wait for me because he is my subordinate. If a superior comes, the interrupt is acting on me, and I have to immediately stop the lecture and go follow my superior. So that is another aspect where we could see that interrupt is acting on the system, but system to decide whether to give service or not to give service. Therefore, it has been a practice is that the interrupt handling is a mechanism should be thoroughly studied. So in this case, what I could see is that the interrupts which has been used particularly is a mostly synchronous and asynchronous nature. The interrupt is acting on me in the system. The system has been working with some other task where the synchronous activity has to be taken place. Therefore, synchronously, the time generation will be done so that the interrupt can be recognized with a definiteness of a rising or falling edge of the clock. Therefore, it is called a synchronous activity. So when you go for synchronous activity, one has to have a reference clock. The clock will be much useful to us to see that synchronously it does the task of interrupting. So if you see the interrupt in asynchronous nature, where I could see that the asynchronous in a sense is that interrupt can be obtained by system at any time, irrespective of the time factor. So therefore, there is no reference clock. It is been as and when it requests for an interrupt, the CPU has to give the service. Otherwise, it has to just monitoring the interrupt points so that whether any device wants to have an interrupt or not. So it is purpose of the CPU to thoroughly monitor the interrupt routine so that whether interrupts are acting on him or not. So the devices which has been interrupting the CPU very periodically, that depends upon how interrupt has been serviced. So therefore, the interrupt generation can be in external devices which has been connected to this point. They like a memory transfer, data transfer to a CPU via the CPU, like that. So therefore, the data transfer from external device has to be sent back to the memory of the internal. It can be used for this purpose. So the interrupt will give a signal to the CPU to see that data transfer has been ready, the device will be ready to transfer the data. So the CPU, depending upon its situation, it will give a service or not to give a service. So some of the examples which I could see here is that the synchronous activity where the divided by zero or memory segmentation, memory has been segmented as core segment, data segment, stack segment, and extra segment. So therefore, when you want to access the data from a data memory, instead of that, if you point to some other point, then it is a error will be created. This error has to be informed to CPU that what sort of error has been occurred here. So instead of having the data segment, it has been accessing the code segment. So there's the error has to be reported. It has to be sensed through an interrupt. Like that, you can see that the synchronous and asynchronous activities have been taken care of by the interrupts also. So if you see further, and this gives me a brief idea how interrupt has been taken care of. The instruction have been given in the first block, and then followed by a check if handling of the interrupt enabled. So when the instructions are coming, the interrupt has been generated or not. That is, the enable bit has to be properly, thoroughly checked or monitored by the CPU. Afterwards, it also checks for a priority. Which priority is interrupt? If interrupt is acting, what is priority of the interrupt is very, very important. Therefore, after that, it just checks a default priority if IP shows equal priority source of the other. So therefore, once it has been identified what sort of interrupt has been acting, then as you say that interrupts are vector oriented. Vector in a sense is that direction oriented. What is direction is that it has been pointing to some memory location where it has to be pointing out. Suppose I have a different interrupts 1, 2, 3, 4. One will have certain predefined location in the memory. 2 will have a predefined location in the memory. 3 will have predefined location in the memory. When interrupt has been sensed by the processor, it has been pointing to that vector address where it has to do the task of ISS, that is interrupt service subroutine. It's called as ISS. So next, before going for ISS routine, it has to save the previous contents of the registers and the instruction pointer and stack pointer, etc. that's been given by the block here. So that is a block where I could see that this has been given here. Okay. And similarly, it runs the ISR routine, then restore PC and return back. Once the interrupt service routine has been completed, immediately it has to come back to the program, main program. So that means when it's been doing a main program, interrupt has been acting, it's been deviating from the main program to the interrupt service routine, then it completes the interrupt service routine, then comes back to the main program. After what it has to do, it has to pop back the previous data of the registers, stack pointer, instruction pointer, etc., so that it can resume back the main program. Otherwise, if any interrupts are pending, it will go back and checks for whether the interrupts have been pending or previously it has not been serviced. Like that, the CPU has been really a busy schedule. It can observe these to see that the interrupt will be taken care of. So if you see I already said the priority levels can be assigned to the interrupt, and each interrupt can be enabled or disabled individually. Suppose I have low priority interrupt and high priority interrupt. When a high priority interrupt has to be given a service, then low priority interrupt is also acting, it has to be masked. So it has to be disabled. Masking in a sense is that it has to be disabled. It is not be seen by the CPU. It will see only higher priority interrupt in the beginning. It services the higher priority interrupt, then it goes for next lower priority interrupts. Like that, the interrupt priority levels has been assigned in the interrupt levels, and it has been taken care of by the system on how to service, when to service, what to service. These are very important factors one has to look into the things. Suppose I have a device have been connected to the CPU through interrupt controller, and where the nested interrupt in a sense is that I have first one device wants interrupt. This interrupt will in turn will lead to another interrupt. That interrupt will go to other interrupt, then it will go to the CPU. So like that, instead of taking direct device interrupting the CPU, I can go through different interrupt levels. As at last, it will reach the CPU, which interrupt is handling here. So that's called nested interrupt, one after another. So same device will be routed through different nested interrupts. Then it will reach to the architecture of the CPU. So then CPU will recognize which device will be interrupting. So therefore, I can able to go, and nested interrupts is a very powerful tool for me to add more number of devices which can interrupt the interrupting CPU. The interrupt nesting allows the preemption also. What is preemption is very important is that suppose a process has been under execution, which has been through an interrupt has been acted, it has been doing the servicing of the process, immediately it will be taken out, because if a low service interrupt has been going on acting, then higher priority interrupt comes over there, the lower priority will be suspended, it goes for higher priority interrupt. So like that, it is called as what you call a preemption. So suddenly preempted the interrupt and goes back and again comes back to the previous lowest priority interrupts. Like that, the interrupt is even under service. If it experiences any higher priority interrupt, immediately it deviates from that point, goes to higher priority interrupt, services first, then comes back to the lowest priority interrupt where it has been suspended. So that has been called as the preemption. It has been a very important factor one has to look into in the operating system. But because we have been seeing the real-time operating system, this cases will be frequently arising here. That's been very, very important. Therefore, the ISR routine, which has been written for that particular service routine of the higher priority interrupt, will be taken care of by the user what it has to do. The user ISR will be written by ISR is a software interrupt which has been written by the user. So only the vector is pointing to that point, but it is up to the system or the user to make use of that priority interrupts so that what it has to perform. That program is written by the user. The interrupts inform the processor that the external device for an associated task requires immediate attention. So that's what I have been seeing, that whenever an interrupt acts, the CPU has to sense that it has to understand that some device has been seeking its attention of service. So therefore, the interrupts have been a powerful tool for us in the embedded system. Accurate time management is essential for providing precise time reference for all the applications. I have already said that suppose I have a signal. The signal has been sampled. The first signal has come, and CPU should know that first signal value has come. It has to store it into the memory. How it can be done? The interrupt can be sensed. The simple sample value is arrived. Similarly, second sample has come. Then second sample has come. Immediately CPU should know through interrupt it has to store the second sample value. Similarly, third sample comes over there. Immediately this value of third sample will also be preserved into the memory. So like that, these intersampling time which you refer to is a fixed. If that is the case, then it has been a synchronous activity and there is necessity for time management. How a sample can be done? We have a timer. Timer has been programmed for different intervals of time so that the sampling can be done at regular intervals of time so that the periodicity can be maintained, and therefore I can say that it has been time management has been perfect with respect to the system clock. The time reference to kernel is provided by a high resolution real-time clock hardship. That's what we have seen earlier also, that there is a timer available. These timers will have different counters. These timers will have its own system clock. The timer clock will be almost half of the system clock. Therefore, we had to scale down the system clock divided by, and so that we can have a required clock for the time reference. The hardware timer is programmed to interrupt the processor controller at a fixed rate. That's what I have seen. Take an example of sampling the signal has been at regular intervals of time. Therefore, these intervals of time will be taken as a count. This count will be stored into, suppose I have a 20 milliseconds. I want to get for every 1 millisecond one sample. Therefore, intersampling time comes to 1 millisecond. Therefore, I have loaded a counter with a count value of generating 1 millisecond delay so that every 1 millisecond it has been interrupting, getting the sample value and informing the processor to store the sample value. Like that, we can have a fixed rate of intersampling time so that the sample can be obtained. This is called as timer tick. So interrupts informs the processor that external device or a associated task requires immediate attention. This is what we have seen. We have been deducting out timer tick. We have been seen the timer tick has been generated by a hardware timer which has been programmed, and the count value has been loaded. This count value is equal to a delay. This delay will be generated by the timer. It will be sensed by the CPU so that the sample value can be inputted and stored to the memory. So like that, the timer tick is been taken as a reference by the kernel. Kernel is nothing but the operating system, which is nothing but nucleus of the operating system. The timer tick interval may vary depending upon the hardware timer. So that depends upon the delay what you provide. I said it is a 20 milliseconds. Somebody can take more sample values. Okay, 0.5 milliseconds they won't have sampling, so samples will be doubled. Like that, the interval may be varying depending on the hardware timer. The time parameters for tasks are explained as multiples of timer ticks. So the timer ticks, number of time ticks equal to number of sample values we have been obtaining. The system time is updated based on the timer tick. Therefore, if the timer is having a 32-bit wide count, then the timer tick will also be different. So like that we can have the interrupt. So interrupt has been very, very important. What I could see is that the interrupt will be given to interrupt controller. Interrupt controller in turn will give a signal to the CPU telling that interrupt is generated by a device. Then the CPU gives back a signal telling that the data can be transferred to the memory. So if it has been a small data, it's well and good. Otherwise, if you want to transfer a bulk data, what is happening now? Data transfer means I have a device which is transferring data from a memory into a device. It wants to transfer data into the memory through a CPU. So byte by byte transfer has been taking place because the bus, what you call it as bus, is a data bus or address bus or a control bus is under the control of CPU. Suppose you want to transfer a bulk of data, large data has to be transferred into memory. So the CPU will be requested to relinquish the bus so that the device can be connected through bus to the memory directly without the interference of the CPU. So therefore, the bulk of data in a parallel can be transferred into the memory at a faster rate. Otherwise, in the previous case where CPU is coming to action, then the system becomes slower in data transfer rate. Therefore, if you want to improve the data transfer rate, one has to take care of through a peripheral has to be interfering the system through a DMA transfer. That's why I said here, a caption has been given here as direct memory access control. That's called a DMA. Direct memory access has been much more important for us to transfer a bulk of data from the external device to the memory. When you want to transfer a bulk of data, it takes long time to transfer information byte by byte because when CPU holds the bus under control. Now in the DMA, what happens is DMA requests the CPU through an interrupt controller. The CPU in turn gives an acknowledgement to the interrupt controller to a device telling that the bus is relinquished from its control. CPU is no longer holding the bus. Therefore, the DMA transfer can't take place to memory. So therefore, the hold acknowledgement signals have been very important here in DMA transfer. Because it's been requesting, first device requesting a CPU to hold the bus. Then next, hold acknowledgement has been given to the device. So the device can be connected to the bus directly to the memory so that bulk transfer can take place. Hence, there is necessity to transfer directly without the influence of the CPU is called as DMA. If you request the CPU to relinquish the bus so that the data transfer can be transferred at a faster rate. So therefore, when you talk about these things, very important factor is that the IO mapped access or memory mapped IO has been very important. IO mapped IO or memory mapped IO. In IO mapped IO, what is important is that the address given to a device, IO address, will not be duplicated for a memory. Whereas in memory mapped IO, it can be the IO MBAR line is there, which decides whether the address floated will belong to memory or IO. So therefore, same location can be used for IO or memory in the case of memory mapped IO. That is important to see that is it been IO mapped IO or memory mapped IO. So therefore, the advantage derived here is that IO mapped IO has been generally used here so that a specific location has been reserved for devices. So therefore, the program data transfer we talk about, the polled mode data transfer or interrupt driven data transfer. So polled mode or interrupt driven. So polled mode means I have a device 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So CPU goes and sees whether first device means asking for a service. No, it goes for second device to find out whether it is requesting for a transfer. No, then it goes for a third device like that. So it is called a polling. One after another, CPU going on. If there are 8 devices, it will go through all the 8 devices, then comes back to the first device. So like that, it is called a polling. First device, second device, third device, 8th device. First back to first device. So that is called a polled mode. Interrupt driven. Whenever any device has been there, it can give an interrupt directly, depending upon every device can generate interrupt. The system will be now understand which device is interrupting. Then it also understands that is it a priority oriented. So when interrupt driven data transfer has been affected, then it has to see that what type of interrupt has been acting and type of interrupt has to be seen, then that device can be acknowledged. So therefore, when you go for direct memory access, there are two types of access mechanism and transfer mechanism, is burst mode and cycle stealing. Burst mode means a bulk of data has been transferred, then there will be a gap. Again, burst of data has been transferred, then there is a gap. Cycle stealing means the CPU is going on executing a program. Without the knowledge of the CPU, bus is taken over control by the DMA. When without knowledge of CPU, then it's called cycle stealing. That means CPU is not aware that bus is not under its control. So when CPU is busy in executing a program, for a portion of the time, the DMA takes care of the control of the bus, and data transfer can be taking place like this. So the method of data transfer and access the device for data transfers now is being affected either in a burst mode or cycle stealing mode, and where the data transfer can be serial fashion or a parallel data transfer. Suppose if you see the parallel data transfer, simple data transfer, or a handshake data transfer. So handshaking has to be there, because handshaking means it is a acknowledgement has to be given. Simple data, simply data will be, as and when data is available, it has been transferred. Not like this. Handshake in the sense that there is a, both are handshook together, because the CPU gives acknowledgement. Afterwards, after receiving the handshake signal, the data can be transferred. Like that, the handshake mode data transfer will be there, the parallel data transfer. Serial data transfer, if we talk about the synchronous data transfer, another one is asynchronous data transfer. Synchronous, we have talked at length that with respect to system clock or any clock as a reference, the events can take place at the rising or falling edges simultaneously. So that's called a synchronous activity. Asynchronous, the interrupt can be generated not in a regular period of periodically time, but it can be generated at any time as and when interrupt wants to be generated by the device. So therefore, the asynchronous data transfer and synchronous data transfers are also an examples of a DMA transfer. So I have seen here all these days we have been discussing about the different hardware parts which has been associated with the embedded system, and also we also seen the embedded system how the control has been affected. Afterwards, we also seen that the embedded system applications where have been extensively used in the household, and we've also seen that the embedded system hardware design and a little bit of software, and we also seen the very important structure of the typical embedded system. Now I have been given the Intel family, which has been given here as a microcontroller versions, EPROM, erasable PROM, RAM, 8-bit I/O ports, timer is 16-bit, UART, and power down idle modes. So I have given here generally the EPROM 8731 will have 4K. For other things, it doesn't have any EPROM. So EPROM is erasable programmable PROM, where you can erase and reload your codes into the memory. RAM, you know, RAM is having 128K in most of the cases, and then the extra here shown here is lost 256K. So RAM is one. Why do you need a RAM is that I have a ROM where a system file is loaded. If interrupt occurs, it goes to ROM location. From there, it has jumped to the RAM location. That RAM location will be within this RAM bytes of 128K. Then it goes that ISS routine, then executes the interrupt part. So similarly, I have a I/O ports which has been 8-bit port. So 8-bit ports have been used here. So 8-bit data transfer can be taken place. And we have a timer of 16-bit. We can also have a timer of 32-bit also. I always said that the count value will be increased if you have more number of bits. And you have restricted here with the 16-bit timer to In some case will have 3 timers. All these timers will have a counter. Counter will be loaded with a count depending upon the delay. This delay will be decremented. Once delay comes to 0, it generates the interrupt. So that is the reason why a timer has been very used here, which does a synchronous activity of the events has to be recorded. So UART, that is a communication for UART has been used here, and serial fashion transfers can also be possible. The last one, power down, when I talk about the system is been idling case, what is power drawn by the network. So therefore, power drawn has been very, very important because we have to design the processor in such a way that the heat generation should be dissipated. Therefore, even in idle case also, there will be power loss by the processor. So that's been given here, just whether it is having or not having power down in the idle case. So I have given some small architecture here where the 8051 is a central processing unit connected to internal data bus, and where we have seen the should also have the oscillator and timing, where a crystal has been connected to give a stable clock signal. Then we have a ROM memory here. Therefore, the ROM is read-only memory. We can read only, not write into that point. So where systems firmware can be loaded into the ROM, and certain locations can be user-defined, can be used by the user. Similarly, we have a data memory which has been RAM, where data can be written into or read by the processor. So it can be erased and get reloaded or rewritten into the RAM point. We have a timer. 216-bit timer event counters has been attached to the internal bus. And if you see here, the programmable serial port, full duplex, UART synchronous shifters have been used here. Then the programmable I/O. So it has been used, suppose I have 8255. Is a programmable I/O port, which is will be connected to different devices like the display, or it can be attached to a keyboard like that. So therefore, programmability has been achieved here with 8255 as a program peripheral interface has been given here, because I said already interface has been very, very essential because of the external address. I/O pins has to be connected to the process internal bus through a interface which has been compatible with respect to the buffer and also the speed wise. So therefore, the system internal bus should be matched to the programmability of the devices. We have the 16K byte bus expansion control, okay? Because the control signal has to be divided here. Subsystem interrupts, external interrupts. So apart from that, we can have the interrupt structure where the interrupt controllers gives rise to interrupts, which has been given as a external interrupts or a subsystem interrupts have been given separately lines here to the CPU input point. So therefore, internal data bus has been much essential to see that there not be any system crash. So bus has to be properly terminated so that the reflections will not be happening there, so that data will be reliable. So like that, we can have a brief block diagram. So far, we have not seen in detail about the block diagram, which I want to say about the block diagram here. So here you see the numerically lower privilege level increases. Okay, see, there's a kernel. Kernel is a nucleus of the operating system, over which we have system services, which is called a utility services. Then over which we have a OS extensions is possible. So afterwards we have an application. The user will be outermost orbit. So inner orbit, next orbit system services, above which we have OS extensions, above which applications, over which we have user here. So therefore, the user cannot handle the kernel so easily, as the operating system has been a nucleus built into this centralized location where user cannot easily manipulate the kernel. So there's been such a privilege level has been adopted here in the operating system. So where we have been seeing that system services high-speed operating system interface has been made here, which takes care of the buffering between external world to the internal world. CPN4 software interfaces is also been possible here. So their application software can be in the outermost orbit where the user can easily access. So therefore, I have referred as the PL1, PL2, PL3 like that, the concentric circles, so that the kernel is thoroughly protected here and has been very in the safe custody of the system. So I have seen here a simple diagram, a single line diagram, where a microprocessor I said here, but it's a microcontroller. You can take it simply. It has been attached to a ROM and RAM memory, then I/O ports and peripherals like timer, I/O device. What is I/O device is? Keyboard interface, display unit, etc. has been very important for us. So the single diagram which shows here is that the I/O ports, which has been very, very extensively used, which has been attached to different peripherals, which has to transfer the data into the processors. So the memory can be ROM or RAM. You have seen the importance of the memory. So therefore, it has been very, very essential to see that there's been a. Now we could just see that next, what is the next version of the microcontroller, which can be used so that it has been it can be used here.